The air inside the Supreme Court was thick with silence, the kind of silence that comes before a storm. High above the courtroom, the American flag hung still. Reporters, senators, legal scholars, and aides filled every seat. All were waiting for one thing. Bang! The gavel slammed down. "This court will come to order," Justice Amy Coney Barrett announced, her voice cold and sharp like ice. Every head turned toward the woman standing in the defendant's box, Pam Bondi, the former Attorney General of Florida. Once a regular face on political talk shows, now stood accused of contempt. Her expression was calm, but her fingers gripped the edge of the podium. She wore a plain navy blue suit, her hair pulled back in a tight knot. Her trademark firebrand confidence was gone. In its place, tension and control. Outside the courthouse, the scene was electric. Dozens of reporters shouted into cameras. Protesters chanted. Helicopters hovered above. The nation was watching live. Inside, the atmosphere was just as charged. Justice Barrett didn't look away from Bondi as she read the charges. "You are here today under suspicion of violating the sacred confidentiality of this court's deliberations." A leak, Ms. Bondi won, that shook the very foundation of this institution. Bondi didn't speak. Not yet. 2 months earlier, confidential Supreme Court memos had been leaked to the press. These weren't just ordinary documents. They revealed private debates between the justices about an upcoming ruling on state level. Election interference, one that could change how federal elections were run across the country. The leak was a bombshell. Cable news exploded. Headlines: "Blared a crisis in the court. Who leaked the justices' divide?" The memos showed that the justices were split deeply and bitterly, and the issue. Trust inside the court cracked. Investigations began within hours. Pam Bondi's name surfaced quickly. Just days before the leak, she had gone on live television. Smiling confidently into the camera, she'd said, "Let's just say, the court is more divided than it appears." 10 words. That's all it took. Now, those 10 words were echoing through Washington like thunder. As the press tore through her past, a link was found. Dan Aide, who had worked with her during the 2020 election audit, had recently taken a job in a Senate office with access to those memos. Text messages were uncovered. Some redacted, some not. There was no direct proof yet, but the trail was warm. Back in the courtroom, Justice Barrett leaned forward. "You had access, Ms. Bondi? Not direct access, but enough. Enough to influence, enough to damage." At last, Bondi spoke. Her voice was calm but slightly cracked. "I never leaked anything, but I did speak out of turn. I've worked in politics a long time. I've played the game. But this time I wasn't playing." She paused. "I wanted to warn people. I didn't name names, I didn't share documents, but I felt something wasn't right. And I thought maybe, just maybe, if I said a little, someone would pay attention before it was too late." Justice Barrett's eyes narrowed. "Warn them of what, exactly?" Bondi looked around the courtroom. Faces staring back at her were hard, skeptical. "Of a system cracking from the inside," she said. "Power being used in ways that betray the people it's supposed to protect." "I wasn't trying to destroy the court. I was trying to save something of it." The silence that followed was heavy. A low murmur rippled through the room. The press began typing furiously. Headlines were being born in real time. From the back row, a legal analyst whispered to his colleague, "This isn't just about a leak anymore. This is a war. For narrative. For history." Barrett slammed the gavel again. "This is not a political stage. It's a courtroom." Pam didn't flinch. "With respect, Your Honor, it hasn't been just a courtroom for a long time. People out there don't see marble pillars and robes. They see secrets, fights, power plays. I made one mistake. I spoke when I shouldn't have, but I didn't lie. I didn't manipulate. I didn't betray." Justice Barrett didn't respond right away. She sat still, eyes locked on Bondi, as if trying to read every layer behind her words. The room held its breath. Pam continued. I came here today not to deny, but to explain, because I know what this looks like. I know the headlines, but I'm more than a headline. Then, softly, almost to herself, aren't we all? Outside, the crowd was growing louder. Inside, the weight of the moment pressed down on everyone. This wasn't just about Bondi anymore. It was about something deeper, about truth, about trust, about what happens when the walls that protect democracy begin to crack from within. As Justice Barrett leaned back in her chair, face unreadable, one thing became clear. This trial wasn't just a legal proceeding. It was a test. A test of who still stood for the truth and who had already traded it away. Outside the courthouse, storm clouds gathered. Not in the sky, but in the newsrooms, the social feeds, and behind the closed doors of government buildings. Everyone was watching. Everyone had questions. And no one trusted anyone anymore. Inside, the second day of the hearing began. The air was even heavier than before. Justice Amy Coney Barrett entered, her robe flowing behind her like a shadow. She took her seat with slow, deliberate steps. The courtroom stood, then sat as if under military command. The silence returned tight, electric. Pam Bondi sat at the defense table. She looked more tired than before, but her eyes were sharper. Her lawyers whispered to her, sliding papers across the table. But she wasn't reading. She was listening, watching, measuring every breath in the room. The prosecutor, Special Counsel Dana Ruiz, stood and addressed the court. Your Honor, the government intends to prove that the defendant, Pamela Bondi, used her access to confidential information and her relationship with a known Senate aide to indirectly release privileged Supreme Court documents. Her purpose? To sway public opinion and interfere with pending judicial decisions. Barrett raised an eyebrow. You are accusing her of calculated subversion. Ruiz nodded. Yes, Your Honor, and contempt of court. Pam's lawyer stood. Next, older, gray-haired, sharp-eyed. Your Honor, what my client said on television was not illegal. It may have been ill-advised, but it was not criminal. She did not leak any documents. She did not instruct anyone to. The real story here is the panic caused by power, not proof. The judge stared at him. Then she turned to Pam. You say you spoke out of concern for the court, for the system. But concern is not a license to violate confidentiality. Pam stood. Her voice was low, careful. I agree, Your Honor. I'm not here to pretend I'm innocent of everything. I'm guilty of being reckless, of wanting to stop something I didn't fully understand. Justice Barrett leaned forward. Then explain it to us. What were you? Trying to stop? The courtroom shifted. Phones went down. Attends froze. Every ear leaned in. Pam swallowed hard. There were talks, private meetings between certain justices and external political figures, lobbyists, even donors. I was told all for court that decisions were being influenced not just legally, but politically. I wanted to raise the alarm without burning the building down. Ruiz objected. Speculation, hearsay. But Barrett didn't stop her. Let her speak. Pam's voice grew stronger. The leak wasn't mine. But I knew something would leak. Someone wanted it, too. I don't know who, and I didn't help. But when I was asked on live TV how divided the court was, I told the truth. A vague truth, yes, but a real one. Justice Barrett closed her eyes for a moment. She didn't want this to be true. Not from Bondi, not from someone she once respected, Devon, agreed with politically. But this wasn't about politics now. It was about the soul of the system. Barrett asked, You say there were outside influences on the court. Do you have names? Pam hesitated. The courtroom pulsed like a drum. Then she said, I have one. But I'm not sure if releasing that name here would protect justice or destroy it. Barrett's expression changed for just a second. Something flickered in her eyes. Recognition? Fear. She looked to the court reporter. Record sealed for the next statement. Pam leaned toward the microphone and whispered a name. The moment she said it, Barrett's face turned to stone. Gasps erupted around the room. One of the attorneys dropped his pen. The name was known. Very known. Not just in legal circles, but internationally. A figure tied to political campaigns, dark money networks, and foreign lobbying scandals. Someone with influence over both parties. Someone no one dared touch. Ruiz was already turning red. We request an immediate recess. Barrett nodded slowly. Granted, she struck the gavel, but the silence didn't return. The courtroom burst into noise. Phones flew out. Reporters ran to the exits. Live feeds cut back in and outside. The crowd waiting in the rain now had fuel for fire. One reporter said it best, live on camera. This is no longer just a contempt case. This is a confrontation between truth and shadow, between one woman's courage and the system that may try to crush her for it. Inside, Pam sat back down. Her lawyer leaned in. Do you know what you just did? She didn't answer, but she knew. The war had officially begun, and there was no turning back. The rain outside hadn't stopped. If anything, it's got heavier. If the sky was reacting to what had just happened inside the Supreme Court, cameras lined up along the courthouse steps. Reporters huddled under umbrellas. Security tightened inside. The courtroom remained in recess, but the energy had completely changed. The walls seemed to vibrate with tension. People whispered, theorized, guessed. Some were scared, some were excited. But no one was calm. Pam Bondi sat silently. Her lawyer paced behind her, furious. You named him. You named him. Do you have any idea what you've done? Pam looked ahead, her voice quiet. Yes, I finally did what no one else would. Across the room, special counsel Dana Ruiz was already on her phone, her face pale, her lips moving quickly but silently, like someone reporting a crime that hadn't happened yet but was about to dot at the center of it all. Justice Amy Coney Barrett sat motionless at the bench. She had not moved since recess was declared, her hands folded tightly, her jaw clenched. The name Bondi had spoken was one she knew well too well. She remembered the meetings, the pressure, the threats that weren't called threats. The smiling, donors who promised nothing but hinted at everything. She had tried to keep her distance, but she was no fool. Influence had a way of slipping in through locked doors. When the courtroom reconvened, there were no opening statements. No evidence was presented. Only silence. Then Barrett spoke. We are now entering sealed proceedings. The press will be escorted out. All electronic devices must be turned in. Groans and protests followed, but security moved quickly. Within minutes, the room emptied until only the legal teams, the judge, and Bondi remained. Barrett looked directly at her. I want to make something very clear. If you're lying about this, it will destroy you. Pam held her gaze. And if I'm not? That was the question. Barrett nodded. Then we'll need proof. Pam reached into her briefcase and pulled out a black USB drive. She placed it on the table with 2 fingers, slowly. It says emails, messages, and meeting notes from 2 years ago. It was given to me by a former aide. I haven't released it. I was waiting for the right time. Barrett stared at the drive like it was a grenade. Ruiz exploded. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. We cannot allow unverified materials from a hostile witness. Barrett held up her hand. We will verify them. In private chambers with a federal security team, Ruiz was still furious. We ask that the court detain Ms. Bondi until this material can be validated. Which may be a flight risk. Pam stood up, her voice clear. I'm not going anywhere. Barrett looked between the 2 women. Ms. Bondi, until the files are reviewed, you will remain in custody, but not jail. You will be held under protective supervision in a federal safe house. Ruiz objected again, but it was overruled. As the gavel came down once more, Pam felt a strange thing happen inside her. Not fear, not relief, resolve, outside. Chaos had already begun. News anchors were reporting leaks of their own. Though the court was sealed, someone inside had leaked the name, she whispered. And now it was everywhere on TV tickers, social media. Feeds whispered in congressional hallways. The name was Victor Halloran, billionaire strategist with silent power in Washington. He was known as a donor, but that was only the surface. Below that, he was tied to foreign governments, shell companies, and even voter manipulation software sold to local election offices. He had never been accused, never been caught. Until now, within ours, the White House released a statement. We trust the court to handle all matters with impartiality. We urge the public to avoid drawing conclusions until facts are confirmed. It didn't help. Protests began by nightfall outside the court, the Capitol, even on the streets of Halloran's estate. People demanded investigations. Others accused Pam of political theater. Conspiracy hashtags trended, followed by deep dive. YouTube videos and emergency podcasts. Everyone had an opinion. But Pam, she was alone in a secure room 2 floors below the courthouse. No phone, no news. Just a bed, a table, and her thoughts. A guard knocked. You have a visitor. She turned. Who? The door opened. It was Barrett. No robe. Just a long coat. And eyes that had seen too much. Pam stood slowly. Why are you here? Barrett looked at her to ask you one question. Are you ready for the next part? Pam didn't blink. What's the next part? Barrett stepped closer. Her voice was quiet. When the country finds out how deep this goes, they're going to come for all of us. Pam nodded. Let them. For the first time, Barrett gave a small, bitter smile. It's already started. And with that, the door shut behind her, leaving Pam in silence again. But it wasn't empty anymore. It was loaded with the sound of history waking up. The USB drive was now in federal custody. A digital forensics team had been working nonstop in a sealed government lab tracing file histories, decrypting old communications, and verifying sender metadata. It wasn't just about what Pam Bondi had exposed, it was about proving it beyond any doubt. The storm outside the courtroom was already global. The storm inside was just beginning at 6:14 a.m. A red flag alert was issued to select members of the National Security Council. Not about a foreign missile, not about a cyber attic, but about a file. One labeled Memorandum Number 7, Voter Access Suppression Initiative, Confidential. The file was authored by a man named Victor Halloran. Its contents were explosive. It outlined a covert strategy using legal loopholes and international consulting firms to suppress voter access in swing states during the last 2 federal elections. There were suggestions of cooperation with external lobbying agents disguised as private contractors. Even more alarming, the file contained a digital signature tied to a secure Supreme Court internal database, meaning someone had accessed it from within. That evidence alone was enough to cause a seismic shift in Washington. By noon, Amy Coney Barrett had been pulled into a closed-door meeting with the Chief Justice and 2 senior intelligence officers. No media, no minutes, just questions. And what they asked stunned her. Did you know any of this was happening under your watch? Barrett paused. No, but I suspected. Back in the federal safe house, Pam sat across from Dana Ruiz, who had suddenly gone from prosecutor to negotiator. Gone was her stern tone, replaced by something else. Calculation. You could take a deal, Ruiz said carefully. Say you had partial knowledge but were manipulated. The public would sympathize. You'd avoid a full trial. Pam leaned forward. This isn't about public sympathy anymore. Ruiz studied her. Then what is it about? Pam reached into her jacket and pulled out a second drive. Smaller, older. It looked like it had been through fire, and maybe it had. This one is from 2020. It's not about Halloran. It's about the Supreme Court itself. Ruiz's breath caught. Inside that drive were conversations, private chats between aides, anonymous internal memos, some showing partisan strategy discussions among clerks and consultants tied to the courts. It wasn't illegal, not outright, but it blurred every line between justice and politics, and that for the people. Might be worse, when the news of the second drive leaked, and it did. Because leaks were never accidents in Washington, the narrative shifted dramatically. No longer was this just about a rogue billionaire and a leak. It became a reckoning. A congressional emergency hearing was scheduled. Networks ran full primetime specials. Panels of former justices, campaign experts, and international observers debated whether democracy had been quietly manipulated for years. Is the U.S. judiciary compromised? Read one CNN headline. What Pam Bondi just proved may collapse a system, said another as the headlines exploded. Something more dangerous brewed underground at a safe house in rural Maryland. Pam's Federal protection detail intercepted an unmarked van with forged Homeland Security tags. Inside were tactical surveillance equipment, encrypted devices, and weapons. Someone wasn't just angry. Someone was preparing to erase her. The FBI opened a parallel investigation. When Barrett was informed of the threat, she didn't hesitate. She overruled the U.S. Marshal's office and ordered that Pam be relocated to her own residence. "You're keeping a federal witness in your home?" the marshal barked. "She's not a witness anymore," Barrett replied, her voice sharp. "She's the firewall." Inside her Virginia home, stripped of electronics and guarded by men with eyes like steel, Pam finally had a moment to breathe. She looked at Barrett, who stood by the window, watching the trees sway. "Why are you doing this?" Pam asked. Barrett didn't turn. "'Cause I've lived too long protecting a system that may already be broken. And if I don't help fix it now, I'll die regretting everything I stood for." Silence settled between them, not empty, but full of understanding. Pam walked to the window. "They'll come after you, too." Barrett finally looked at her. "They already are." The next morning, two things happened at the same time. A live interview aired on international television. Pam Bondi, sitting across from a seasoned journalist from Al Jazeera, telling her story for the first time in full. She didn't hold back. She spoke of fear, corruption, bravery, and betrayal, a country at war with its own conscience. And while that aired, a private jet landed on a cold, dark airstrip in Zurich. A tall man in a black coat stepped out, surrounded by bodyguards. Victor Halloran had fled the country, but not fast enough. Interpol had been watching. The moment he cleared customs, he was detained. The arrest made international news. It wasn't just a takedown. It was the start of something much bigger. And back in Washington, the Supreme Court remained under lockdown, metaphorically and politically. Internal reviews began. Clerks resigned. Hearings were postponed. Pam Bondi looked out from the back porch of Barrett's home. For the first time in weeks, the clouds began to lift, but no one believed the storm was over, because the most dangerous truth still hadn't been told. Rain fell softly on the rooftops of Washington, D.C. The city was quiet, but every office window flickered with light. Inside, power players were working overtime, not for justice, but for survival. Pam Bondi sat on a worn leather couch inside Justice Barrett's residence. Her face was tired, her eyes scanning the silent room as if expecting the walls themselves to listen. On the table in front of her lay two USB drives, one already exposed to the world, the other still locked, still hidden. "Are you sure you want to go through with this?" Barrett asked. Pam nodded slowly. "If I stop now, they win. Not just Halloran. All of them." That morning, the Justice Department announced a full-scale investigation into the judiciary's relationship with outside consultants. Senators from both parties called for emergency hearings. The term judicial influence network was trending worldwide. Victor Halloran, now in Swiss custody, refused to speak. His lawyers, some of the most expensive in the world, threatened to sue international agencies. But leaked emails once Pam had provided made the denials meaningless. The evidence was overwhelming, and yet something didn't feel right. That evening, a quiet knock at the door startled everyone. Barrett stepped forward, signaling the security team. They opened it cautiously. Standing in the doorway was a woman in a black raincoat, soaked but calm. Her ID read, Isabel Rojas, Department of State Intelligence Division. I need 5 minutes, she said. No files, no phones, just the truth. Barrett hesitated, then nodded. Inside, as the rain pattered outside, Isabel spoke without ceremony. There's a reason Halloran moved the money offshore. There's a reason he kept those contacts hidden, even from his own lawyers. Pam leaned in. What reason? Isabel pulled a small envelope from her coat. Inside were satellite photos and a printed transcript. It showed encrypted conversations between Halloran and 2 unnamed foreign officials, one from Eastern Europe, the other from the Middle East. They were planning something bigger, Isabel said. Influencing votes was just a step. The real goal was to seed mistrust, destroy public confidence in democratic systems from the inside. Barrett's face tightened. Foreign interference. Coordinated, Isabel confirmed. And parts of our judiciary were used without even realizing it. Pam's chest tightened. She had suspected domestic corruption. But international manipulation, that changed everything. They needed someone to talk about it, Isabel added, looking at Pam. And that person has to stay alive. The room fell into stunned silence. The next morning, chaos erupted again. A major network released a video taken secretly inside. A Supreme Court clerk's office showing confidential documents being copied after hours. The face was blurred, but the identity was clear to insiders. One of Barrett's own former clerks, now working in a consulting firm tied to Halloran. Barrett's world cracked. She walked into her private chambers that afternoon and locked the door. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then she opened a locked drawer. Inside was a sealed letter, something she had written nearly a decade ago, a resignation. She had never submitted it. Always thought she'd die on the bench. But now she wasn't sure if the bench deserved her anymore. Outside, Pam Bondi was preparing for her second live interview, this time with Anderson Cooper. CNN, it would be watched by over 20 million people. She sat beneath the bright lights, powder dabbed on her face, mic clipped to her jacket. Her voice was steady, clear, even as the first question landed like a hammer. Did you ever expect it would go this far? Pam looked straight into the camera. No, I thought I was just breaking silence. I didn't realize I was shattering a shield. The interview rocked the country. She named no names. She claimed no victimhood. But she said enough. That evening, social media lit up with a single hashtag. Hashtag the shield is cracked, and in a hidden corner of a European embassy in Washington, a man watched the interview. He wasn't smiling. He typed a message into an encrypted app. She's gone too far. Authorize the protocol. Now, across town, a car pulled out of a dark alley. 2 men in suits, no plates, no GPS, just orders. At 3:12 a.m., a warning came in. Justice Barrett's home had been breached. Alarms blared. Security scrambled. But when the agents arrived, the house was empty. Pam Bondi and Barrett were gone, vanished. The last thing left behind was a note, handwritten on judicial letterhead. The truth doesn't need a courtroom. It just needs courage. The world woke up to breaking news. Pam Bondi and justice. Barrett missing. Possibly fled. FBI confirms threats linked to global political network. Some said they ran. Others said they were taken. But Isabel Rojas knew better. They've gone dark, she whispered to her superior. To finish what they started. It's because the final move hadn't been made yet. The most dangerous part of the game was still ahead. The world was on fire with questions. News anchors looked stunned. Every major channel, CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera ran the same breaking headline. Bondi and Barrett vanish after judicial leak fallout, global manhunt begins. In the silence that followed, chaos spread. Protesters gathered outside federal courts in D.C. demanding answers. Twitter turned into a battleground between conspiracy theorists, whistleblower supporters, and government loyalists. The Supreme Court canceled all upcoming hearings. For the first time in modern history, the judiciary itself looked like it was collapsing from within. But in a small safe house 3 miles outside Geneva, Switzerland, the 2 missing women sat in silence. No phones, no internet, only paper files, flash drives, and a wall covered in maps and red thread connections. Pam Bondi sat hunched over a laptop with no Wi-Fi card, scrolling through thousands of encrypted documents. Next to her, Justice Barrett was reading a thick binder titled Blackwire Protocol: Foreign Psychological Disruption Tactics. The documents revealed a terrifying truth. The judicial leaks were never the real operation, only the bait. The real plan was far deeper, older, and more international than anyone imagined. Years ago, an AI-based algorithm had been created in Eastern Europe. Its purpose to scan court rulings, manipulate social sentiment online, and trigger political division at key moments. Pam whispered they were hijacking public trust, case by case. Barrett closed the binder slowly. They didn't want a verdict. They wanted unrest. The name that appeared most often in the files was a shell entity called Velkin Initiative, registered in no country, no board of directors, but linked to judicial lobbying groups, election monitoring, NGOs, and a dozen anonymous cryptocurrency wallets. Pam clicked open one last file, a voice recording from inside a political conference in Istanbul. A man's voice said clearly, "We don't need to win elections. We just need them to stop trusting votes." Barrett stared blankly. This isn't lawfare, it's psychological warfare. Back in the U.S., federal authorities had started their own version of a manhunt. But not everyone believed Pam and Barrett had run away. Some inside the CIA quietly believed they had gone dark, to finish what no one else could. One of those people was Isabel Rojas. She stood inside a command room in Langley, watching red pins multiply on a global map. "We have 48 hours before the Velkin server changes IP again," she said to her team. "If they don't surface, soon we lose the thread." Her superior, a man with a tired face and navy eyes, said, "They won't surface. I'll burn it down from the inside. The question is whether they make it out." Isabel looked at the red dot, blinking over. "Geneva. They have the files," she said. "But now they need the one thing Velkin never saw coming." "What's that?" the superior asked. "A public confession," she said. And not from Pam, from Barrett. Late that night, inside the safe house, Pam finally looked up from her screen. "It's all here," she said. "Financials, communications, blackmail, judicial pressure campaigns. This could blow the top off 5 governments." Barrett didn't respond at first. Then she stood, walked to a hidden camera at the edge of the room, and turned it on. "I need to say something," she said, publicly, not as a justice, as a citizen. Pam hesitated. "Are you sure? This could mean exile, or worse." Barrett looked into the lens. Her eyes didn't blink. "They used my court, my country, my silence. I won't give them my soul." The message was short, direct. She named no names but pointed to Velkin. She described how judgments had been gently nudged through back channels, not bribed, just influenced. "Democracy," she said, "is not broken by force. It is broken by suggestion." Pam encrypted the video, burned it onto a hardened flash drive, and packed it into a diplomatic pouch. "How do we deliver this?" Barrett asked. Pam didn't answer. She walked to the back wall and opened a hidden compartment. Inside was a small satchel, a passport, and a name. "Via Istanbul," she said. "We meet a man named Anton Vukovic." Barrett's breath caught. He's ex-Velkin, Pam explained. But he's ready to flip. He'll help us leak it the right way through neutral global media, not us or Russia. Barrett exhaled slowly. Then let's end it. They left the safe house that night with fake names and cold determination. 3 hours later, the building exploded. The safe house burned to ash. The world thought they were dead. But the next day, a teaser video was posted on a secure server accessed only by 12 investigative journalists across 4 continents. No metadata, no origin, it's just a title. The Velvet Coup, a statement from inside the court. The real war had just gone public. The final confrontation was waiting, in a city where law and shadows held hands. Istanbul, the sky over Istanbul, was gray with smoke and storm. Crowds moved quickly through the city's winding streets, the edge of the Bosphorus, in a cold and windowless conference bunker beneath a luxury hotel. A secret meeting had begun. 12 journalists from 12 countries sat in a circle. No cameras, no microphones, only paper and encrypted drives. In the center of the table was a black flash drive marked V2 Final. Anton Vukovic, former Velkin strategist turned whistleblower, stood against the far wall. His face was pale, jaw tight. He had delivered the message Pam and Barrett had risked everything for. "I've verified the contents," he said, his voice shaking. "It's real. Judicial tampering, AI psychological tools, financial trails. Everything." The journalist said nothing at first. Then a woman from Reuters asked, "Why now? Why risk your life?" Anton looked toward the dark hallway, where 2 figures were quietly entering. Pam Bondi and Justice Amy Coney Barrett stepped into the room, alive, exhausted, and without disguise. The silence in the room cracked into whispers. Barrett spoke first. "Because this is bigger than any one country. It's about how easily truth can be shaped when no one is watching." Pam stepped beside her. We watched, and we refused to stay silent. Back in Washington, news of their survival hit like a thunderbolt. CNN broke it first. Pam Bondi, Justice Barrett, surfaced in Istanbul. Leak confirmed authentic. Then Al Jazeera. AI weaponized against global judiciary whistleblowers stepped forward. And finally, the White House, caught flat-footed, issued a vague statement. "We are evaluating all allegations and will pursue truth and accountability." But truth moved faster than statements. Within hours, the full video was released globally. Barrett's confession was calm and damning. "I was never bribed." But I was cornered. Gently, over time. Friends whispered. Colleagues pressured. Cases shifted, and I let it happen until I couldn't anymore. This isn't about guilt. It's about responsibility. The video showed screenshots, timelines, names. Slowly, the architecture of the Velkin Initiative unraveled before the eyes of the world. Across Europe, multiple judges stepped down. In South America, 3 elections were suspended for fraud review. In the U.S., Senate hearings were scheduled within 48 hours. And then came the unexpected twist. A breaking leak, not from Pam, not from Barrett, but from Isabel Rojas, the CIA analyst who had quietly tracked them. She published her own report to a secure watchdog site. Velkin was not rogue. It was tolerated, known by some, ignored by others, because chaos meant power for those who understood it. Suddenly, the scandal turned inward. Pam and Barrett were no longer fugitives. They were fire starters. International arrest warrants for Velkin officials followed. Assets were frozen. Extradition treaties activated. And in Istanbul, Pam stood on the hotel balcony alone, staring at the sea. Barrett joined her. "They'll never let us go home again," Pam said quietly. Barrett nodded. "Maybe we don't need to regret anything." Barrett turned her head slowly. "Only that I didn't speak sooner." They watched as boats moved across the water. A new world was waking up, bruised but not blind. Anymore, behind them, the journalists continued to upload the files. Across the globe, people opened their phones and saw the truth. Not polished, not partisan. It's just raw and unfiltered. An old news anchor on a late-night broadcast said it best. In a time when truth was for sale, two women bought it back with their silence, their flight, and finally, their voice. 3 days later, the UN voted unanimously to form the Independent Judiciary Security Council, the first global attempt to protect courts from political or digital manipulation. Pam Bondi and Amy Barrett didn't attend the ceremony. They were last seen in Prague, checking into a hotel under new names. Legends now. Not heroes, not saints. Just a people who knew too much and refused to be quiet. The final line of Barrett's video echoed across newsrooms, schools, and parliaments. Justice is not a building or a title. It's a choice. One we make when no one's watching. And for once, the world chose to watch.